Hello. I just finished reading it. And I wouldn't say I'm the biggest fan of this book. It took me a really long time to read it, in my opinion. I feel like I read books fairly quickly, and this took me a little over a month to read with like a good week long break where I just didn't touch it because I needed to read something else or I was gonna go insane. And I haven't read all of a Stephen King book since I was in high school. I think I read Doctor Sleep and then I attempted to read Pet Cemetery in college, but I never finished Pet Cemetery. And I forgot that I don't particularly like Stephen King's writing. But after watching It Welcome to Derry, I was like, I do want to finally read this book. And I know it was a big book, but I was not expecting like this level of large. It's 1,153 pages long, which is just too many fucking pages. I will state that honestly, I mean, there are some things here and there that I would cut out of it, but it needs that level of description. Like, there's so much happening in the book that it needs to be that big for like the context, the fact that it's like you're going back and forth and you're skipping 27 years and stuff like that. And even then it like talks about other parts and other histories of Derry and stuff like that. And so it's like you kind of do need a book that big to talk about like the big depth that is Derry and what the kids went through and stuff like that. But like it's so fucking long. I don't think, no, that's a lie. Okay, I definitely have read something this big before because I looked it up and I want to say it's 400,000 words or something like that. Like, I don't think it's quite 500k. And I think in terms of books, like physical books, I've never read something that big. But I read a lot of fan fiction, and so I've read a lot of fan fictions that are larger than that. But it's like when I'm reading something on my laptop, I feel like I don't see the vastness of what I'm truly reading apart from something that I physically hold and like can actually see how thick it is. And like, because a lot of people are like, oh, because I'm one of those people, I'm like, oh, a 100,000 word fan fiction, that's some light reading right there. Uh, except it's not, because this took me over a month to read. And I think part of it was just like the size is just so daunting. But it's like it should be that big. Like, there's a lot of context to it and stuff like that. And there are some parts that I liked about it, and there are definitely some bits that I didn't like about it. I actually really liked the back and forth that it does between the Losers Club as children and the Losers Club as adults. There were some instances where it was hard to, I wouldn't say it was hard to figure out the difference in those because it's kind of easy. It's like in the first half of the book, if it's set in the 80s, so 27 years later, it's italicized. Everything's italicized. So you know they're adults now. You know what's happening is when they're adults. And if it's set in the 50s, then it's, I guess, like regular font. Like, it's not italicized. So you can kind of tell the difference. And then once you get halfway through the book, it essentially flips where it's like everything in the 50s is italicized and everything in the 80s is like a normal font, because it's sort of like, this is where we've crossed, like they're all back in Derry now and they're just starting to remember what they were going through. It's like at the beginning it's like, here's sort of what the kids were going through and they're sort of remembering things here and there as adults, but then you get to halfway through and they've met up and they're like sharing their own stories. Like, Beverly talks about like seeing Patrick Hockstetter die, and Eddie talks about like when he learns that like his medicine is a placebo, like it's not actual asthma medication. There's a bunch of others because they talk about everything, but there's so much fucking context to this book, I honestly don't remember a lot of it. And I did like that, but there are some instances specifically at the beginning where there are flashbacks within them being kids, and I'll specifically state the story of when Ben is thinking back to when he first saw it, and it kind of like took me a minute to realize that this was a flashback, because we've got normal font and then more normal font, but it's like clearly this is happening in the past, because I think it was like in the middle of him getting attacked by Henry Bowers and gang, and he's like, I remember when something horrible happened again, and it was in like the winter time, and I was going home and I saw a mummy walking across like a river of ice, and the balloons were floating in the wrong direction, and then the mummy turned in, oh no, I don't think the mummy ever turned into Pennywise, but like the key component are the balloons, and it's like that's when he realized that was the first time he ever saw it. But I found it sort of difficult at first, because there's a lot of times where that happens, where they all sort of think back to the first time they saw it, and sometimes it's within the context, like Stan specifically tells them as a group when he first saw it, but a lot of times it's thinking back by themselves of the first time they saw it, and then like sort of like fast pacing it through after they build the dam in the Barrens of like when it actually occurred. And I did find that a bit confusing, but like other than that, I did, especially at the end where it like keeps going back and forth between them as kids and them as adults, like when they fight it as kids, and then when they fight it as adults, or when they're trying to escape the tunnels as kids and then escaping the tunnels as adults. And I did like that back and forth. I thought that was really interesting. It's a great way for book storytelling. It's a terrible way to describe it in a movie. So I do like, I've never seen the Tim Curry okay, sorry, the sun was bothering me. Where was I? Oh yeah, like I've never seen Tim Curry's like Stephen King's It, which I do plan on watching after this, but so I don't quite entirely know what the order of things is there, but I do like with the newer movies that it's like you have the movie of them as kids, and then you switch to the movie of them as adults, and then remembering what they did as kids. And I did really, really like that. I thought it was like interesting. There were some things that I like know that they took out and changed from the movies that like I wouldn't say that like I was a fan, like there's so much. So like it's understandable that they took some things out. My one gripe with the movies, I'd say, is that I don't like that they took Mike being the historian and gave that role to Ben. I don't particularly like that, because this book is essentially written, I wouldn't say it's entirely written like that, but it's essentially written in a way with like the assumption that sort of like Bill wrote it, and then you have these interludes of Mike's journal about the history of Derry and about like all the shitty, horrible things that have happened. Like there's an interlude where they talk about the burning of the Black Spot. They have an interlude about the gang getting massacred. There's there's so many. Like there's a bunch of different interludes, and of course the last one is very bittersweet, because it's like Mike is in the hospital and he's talking about how like he doesn't remember really anybody, like he's starting to forget, or it's like he calls Bill and Bill straight up doesn't know who he is for a hot second. And so it's like you have that, but it's like those interludes are specifically written by Mike, and then it's sort of like, I wouldn't say that like Bill wrote the book, but it sort of feels like Bill wrote the book in that way. And I did like that, and I didn't particularly enjoy like after reading this book and realizing that they sort of took that for Mike and gave it to Ben in the movies. It's like Ben is his own person and he's the architecture, and they sort of like took out the whole architecture portion of Ben in the movies, because I don't think they build the dam in the movies or anything. So like his whole architecture and knowing how things are built just because he knows them isn't really a thing, and so they gave him the role of being the historian instead, which I thought was interesting, but I also wasn't really the biggest fan of it. But yeah, like there weren't a whole lot of changes. Or like the big thing is that like people make fun of the ending of It Chapter 2 because they're like, they bullied Pennywise to death, and it's like, you, after reading the ending of this book, you could not put that in a visual format. Like I don't even know how you do it. It's like they go to like a void and essentially like outwit Pennywise and then physically beat the shit out of her at the same time, and it just like I don't even know how you describe that, like, or like show it. Like it's so crazy. Like it gets weird. It's very cosmic horror-y. It's very strange. Like they hint towards the turtle in the movies, but like in the book you physically see and talk to the turtle, and there's like a whole other being that's just referred to as the other. Like you don't even really know what it is. You just know that like this is something else. It's inferred that it's the deadlights in and of itself, but like you're not entirely sure. Or like they completely cut out the portion where it's like it has offspring, and that Ben has to go around literally smashing all of the spider eggs. It was just, oh my god, like you could not at all turn this into like a visual format. Like that ending is bonkers. So like I'm complete, but they do actually physically go and like it's Bill and Richie who do it, but like they like physically grab its heart and like squeeze it. And I'm honestly kind of glad that in the movies it's all of them. Because, like, yes, they have their own parts to play, except for Beverly. I really don't like the way that Beverly is written in this book. And I've had that issue for a very long time. I don't like the way that Stephen King writes women, but especially with Beverly, because she's very much like this damsel in distress. Like she stays with Eddie's body. She doesn't really do anything. She spends the whole time around being like, Bill, save me. Ben, save me. And I didn't like that. Like I like her in the movies a lot more because she's more of a badass. She's more of like, I don't give a fuck what anybody else thinks. Like, I'm gonna be my own person. Like, I'm gonna write my own way. And I don't like that she is more of a damsel in distress and like relies on the men in her life a lot more. And I think in a way, like, especially with like her relationship with her father and then who she ends up marrying, like she very much ends up marrying her father. Like that's not surprising. She sort of forgets about home, and then you know a lot of people who experience abuse as a child will then try to search out that abuse as adults. Like it very much tracks. It's in the same way where it's like Eddie marries his mother. In the movies, it's not subtle because the actress who plays Eddie's mom in It Chapter 1 plays Eddie's wife in It Chapter 2. So, like, it's not subtle in that way, but I do, like, find it really annoying that Beverly is just this constant damsel in distress. Like, she's nothing more than that, and I didn't particularly like that. I just thought it was really frustrating and annoying. I'm like, listen, you could be a bad bitch, but you're not being a bad bitch, and I don't like it. So there's that. The one thing that like shocked me from the very beginning about this book are the ages of these kids, because I'm gonna keep referring to It Chapter 1 and It Chapter 2. In It Chapter 1 and It Chapter 2, these kids are like middle schoolers. I'd say like 13, 14-year-olds. They are elementary schoolers in the books, and it just makes it so much worse. One, because of what they go through. Like, they go through so much. But two, also just the way that they act. Like, I think part of it is that it is I wouldn't even say it's a book of its time. It was written in the 80s, but very much Stephen King was trying to think about, like, what kids in the 50s would do, and he was, I don't know how old he is, but he probably was like a kid in the 50s, and like thinking about like what those people, like what those kids would do. But like, I don't know, it was hard to process like a bunch of 10-year-olds smoking. Like I could imagine 10-year-olds talking shit the way that they did, but some of the other things, like technically Henry Bowers and his friends are older because they all ended up getting held back. But, like, even then, it's, like, they're all, like, 12-year-olds. Like, imagine a 12-year-old Henry Bowers, like, cutting up a 10-year-old Ben Haystack. Like, that's... Or, no, that's not his last name. But a 10-year-old Ben. And it's just, like, a crazy thought to me. Or it's, like, obviously people always reference the books with the cave scene of essentially the child orgy that occurs. And I did have a friend sort of explain why it's in the book in the first place. I understand why it is. I still think it's horrible. I don't like it. It's like I didn't enjoy reading that section at all. It's very odd. It's very strange. But I sort of understand that it's like they went into that cave as children and they got lost and sort of in a way to escape the tunnels, they had to essentially no longer think as children. So they had to, or like Beverly comes up with the idea of sex to like avoid that. I did not like that at all. Like, I hated reading it. And but like I guess in a way I sort of understand why it was put in the book, but like apparently Stephen King very much regrets putting that scene in the book, rightfully so. It's fucked up on so many levels. And like just awful. But then thinking about it when I first, because I knew about the scene before reading the book, but then I started reading the book and I was like, these are 10-year-olds. I'm gonna have to read this scene and think about 10-year-olds doing that. And I was like, that is fucked up on so many levels. But there are also a lot of other fucked up things that happen in this. Like the after watching It, Welcome to Derry, I'm glad that they made the changes to the black spot that they did, because the burning of the black spot in the book is so much worse. Like, it's essentially the northern version of the Ku Klux Klan is what like burns the black spot. And I'm like, honestly, it would make sense to put it in the show as well, but instead it was like the excuse of hunting down one possible killer, and not like white people just getting irritated that there was this popular speakeasy like run by mostly people of color, and that like white people were also going to the speakeasy because it was a lot more entertaining. And I just thought that was kind of bonkers. They were like, yeah, this is basically the northern version of the KKK, and I was like, excuse me. But yeah, like there's, oh my god, there's just so much in this book. I mean, it's fucking massive. Like there's so much. I'm glad that I read it. I will never touch it again. I was talking to a coworker yesterday who like came in. He was like, what are you reading? And I said, I've got like 50 pages left finally. And he like asked me what I thought of it, and I was like, I don't particularly care for it. I don't really like Stephen King's writing. He's like, yeah, I don't like it either, but like we do have to thank him for some pretty damn good movies that are inspired by this book. And I was like, yeah. So there's that. There's just so much. I don't even know what else to talk about in terms of just because there's so much. And like I said, I started it over a month ago, and I took a break in between, so it's just like a lot of waiting. But I spent like a good, like this entire past weekend reading like 200 plus pages a day, just because I was like, I want to fucking be done with this book. I have like 6 other books, including Heated Rivalry, like on the back stand, being like, I'm gonna put these in book jail until I'm done reading it. So I can't with this book. I like I said, like I'm glad that I read it. There are some things that like I know are in the mini TV series that I'm excited to watch. Like there's a scene of Ben in the library as an adult, and Pennywise shows up, and I'm actually really excited to read that scene or watch that scene, because that scene in this book was fucking hilarious. But yeah, like it's a mixture of it's horrified hilarity is how I describe a good chunk of this book, because it sort of reminds me of a scene from the Texas Chainsaw Massacre where like Grandpa is supposed to be the one to kill the main character, and they like hand him the hammer and he drops it and it falls down and hits her head, and they give him the hammer again and he drops it and it falls down and hits her head. And at first it's kind of funny, and then you realize slowly that that's like a horrible way to go, of just having a hammer constantly like fall out and hit you in the head over and over and over again. So at first you're like, this is really fun. And you're like, oh my god, this is awful. And I feel like that's how a lot of this went. I do like the different forms that it takes in this book, though. Like obviously they couldn't put most of those into the movies for copyright reasons, because a lot of them are like The Mummy or The Creature from the Black Lagoon or Frankenstein or Teenage Werewolf. Like obviously they're references to actual like pop culture things, but I do like that there's such a huge variety of characters and portrayals. Like obviously the clown is still Pennywise's favorite, and you actually get to, or its favorite, and you get to sort of delve into its mind at the end of the book, which I did really like, where it's like it's angry but it's also afraid, which is a new fear that it's, or like a new emotion that it's unlocked, and it doesn't like that, but it's like a clown is great because kids love clowns, but clowns can also be terrifying. And I did like that we got to delve into its mind and what it was thinking. And it's like, I'm gonna lure these kids back and I'm gonna kill them all. And I did really, really like that. I thought it was really, really cool. But like, there's definitely a bigger variety to what it becomes in this more than the movies and TV show and stuff like that. Okay, I have a couple more thoughts. One of those is that it's a product of its time, and I have to keep reminding myself that. But the first time you read, not including the F slur at the beginning of the book, but like there's so many slurs in this book. And sometimes they make sense. Like Henry Bowers using the N-word makes sense. He's a fucking asshole. But the first time you encounter the N-word is in reference to one of Richie's voices. And I was like, excuse me? I was just like, I'm like, slurs everywhere. Which I don't even know if I'd describe it as a product of its time. This book was written in the 80s. But like, it was very interesting to constantly read that. Or there's a slur, they do it a couple times about like people who fought in World War II using a particular slur describing Japanese people, and I was like, bruh. But yeah, I was not here for the slurs. Obviously, I was also not here for the F slur, but I was like, I kind of figured that one would happen because it was used a hell of a lot more in the 80s. So that one makes sense. And then on the topic of horrible fucked up things that happens in this book, Patrick Hockstetter. I've never been so happy to read a 12-year-old get murdered. That kid is fucked up on so many levels. He's such a psychopath. It's crazy. I mean, one, he molests his female classmates. Two, he murdered his own baby brother. And like 3, he kills animals and sticks them in a fridge. And so when I found out how he died, I was so happy. I was like, oh my god, yes, murder this guy with constant leeches. That is wonderful because he's so fucked up and insane. And I was just like, oh my god. Like, my friend did warn me about Patrick Hockstetter. They were like, you know, like, you think, like, yes, the child orgy is fucked up, but so is Patrick Hockstetter. No one references Patrick Hockstetter. I read it and I was like, oh my god, this kid is insane. So I was just like, oh my god, that was something. I read that on Easter. I was like, I gotta read about Patrick Hockstetter killing his like 3-month-old baby brother on Easter. So I was like, oh, this is a fun thing to read. So there's that. And then my final saying I will state about this is the ending's very bittersweet about like everybody forgetting, and I was like, I'm sad that everybody forgets at the end, but it's at the same time it makes sense that in a way, I guess it's forgetting trauma, but it's like they have to forget to move on. It's the same way where it's like Derry gets destroyed at the end of the book, and I honestly like that happened because it's this culmination. It doesn't particularly happen in the 80s, but it does happen in the 50s where like everything's eerily quiet. People are like, Eddie's mom isn't as hung up on getting Eddie to stay in the house as she usually is, and then it's realized through like Beverly's dad chasing her and a couple other people that it's like it has infiltrated everything in Derry. Derry is it. It is Derry. And so I find it really interesting that like after it dies, that the entire town just completely like combusts and gets destroyed, and it kills honestly less people than I thought. I think it said that it killed like 63 people, and I was like, that's less people than I thought. But like it continues to fall apart even months afterwards, and it's like because like it has taken a hold of this town for what, like thousands of years. It was there before the town was built, it was there when the town was built and stuff like that. And so it's just like it's taken itself and its hold and its grasp on this town for so long that the town is basically it, and once it is gone, it's like the town collapses. Like it can't contain itself anymore. It's like the one thing keeping it together is now dead. So now the town has to die as well. And I found that really, really interesting. That it's just like, it was like, I mean, they talk about how it was doing kind of better than it was in the 50s. Like, there was a mall now, and there were like possible investments, and then all of those investments went through because the mall got destroyed and a bunch of other things. And I do sort of like that, where it's just like, you watch these kids live and grow in this town, and then the town becomes a bit bigger, but then all of a sudden it's like the thing keeping the town together dies, and the town has to die as well. And I really, really liked that about it. I thought that was a really interesting way to end the story, and I just I loved it so much. I was just like, oh, I wasn't expecting to like that. Like, I wasn't expecting Derry to just completely fall apart, but when it did, I was like, oh, I'm fully here for that. Like, I like that it does that. I like that it's just like the Derry is it, and it is Derry, and so it's like after it dies, like, you have to destroy what's sort of left of it, and left of it is Derry. And so I did really like that. I mean, I could probably have 10,000 more thoughts about this, but I think those are all my thoughts about it. Let me know if you have read it and what you thought of it. Yeah, stay tuned, because I will be watching Stephen King's It with Tim Curry, and definitely doing a review on it. I'm very much more excited to watch that now that I've read this monster of a book. I'm so excited to move on to something else in terms of reading. But yeah, let me know what you thought. Yeah, like, subscribe. Bye-bye.